Welcome back to another Trade Odds Technical Analysis tutorial. This is Beginner Series Volume 3. We're going to discuss support resistance zones today. So if you watch, especially video 1, I think you're going to have a pretty good grasp of what support and resistance means at this point. So this video is probably going to be a pretty quick one, but this is definitely an important tool to have for your arsenal. That being said, let's get to the video. Here is the disclaimer. Please pause the video, take a minute, read through this. All contents for entertainment and educational purposes only. Nothing's financial advice. All right, so support resistance zone. So what are they? What do they mean? What do they represent? And how can I use them to help make me a better trader? All right, that's what we're going to cover in this video. So first of all, what is a support resistance zone? It's basically an area that you can identify on your chart that shows you key zones. Basically, again, they're slightly different than the horizontal support resistance levels that we talked about in video 1. So you notice that these are zones, right? So like there is basically a small range of price where price has a tendency to visit and move the other direction. So here in this chart, this is actually Matic USDT. You probably can't see that, but this is the exact chart that I went over in Discord with our VIPs. And the red zone that you see here and that you're going to see in the rest of the video, the live examples that we're going to cover, which we actually are going to cover Matic in more detail. So the red zone that you see here is a resistance zone. So basically, anytime price comes into that resistance zone, it has a hard time moving higher, right? Because there's a lot of sellers that are defending that level. And then the green zone that you see here is a support zone that is, again, when price revisits those levels, like you have an abundance of buyers that are willing to buy that level, and it basically retains that level as support until it doesn't, right? And it's just the same thing. So you treat these support resistance zones the same way that you treat the horizontal support resistance zones, in the sense that, like, the more often that these zones are tested, right? The more often these levels are tested, the weaker that support or resistance becomes over time, which we're going to go over here in a little bit. So it's the same concept as far as the horizontals and the zones go. These are just there's this is a little bit of a slight variance to it. And then again, the warning on the bottom, which is absolutely true. Just because the support resistance is broken, it does not necessarily mean that it's going to flip bias, right? So what I mean by that is, just because, let's say that this red zone, that price moves up through it, it doesn't mean that this zone all of a sudden becomes support just because price breaks up. Now you think it would become support, but price, there's instances where it can just come right back through it. So that's something to understand, that like when you're trading these levels, you really want to see it confirmed as a support resistance flip before you really take trades. Or like you have to be aware of those levels. And obviously, like if you want to set a limit order or something to try to catch a retest, you can, but definitely I would set an alert or something to see, are you getting the reaction that you would expect when price, if price does indeed come back down to test that level. So now we're going to go into a couple of examples. I'm going to actually do the Matic USDT because I think that's actually a pretty good one. And again, this is something that we discussed in Discord. And then I'll probably go over one more example after that, which we also recently discussed in Discord. So I know that it's a good example for this video. I actually did a live stream with the VIPs in Discord, and we were coming up with basically trade entries for BNB USDTs, which is one we're going to cover. But let's get to it. Here is Matic USDT on the 1-day time frame. So this is the same chart. Obviously, I deleted the boxes, the support resistance zones that you saw in the previous a couple slides ago, because I want to show you exactly how I pulled them, why I pulled them that way, like where did I essentially figure out that this is a really good support or resistance zone, and kind of how you would trade it, right? So again, this is Matic. Insane price action. And really where we were trading was actually this area here. And I think now that I think about it, it wasn't a I'm actually in replay here. I need to exit this because so this is actually current day. But we were trading this price action here. So I think this was actually in a live stream. It wasn't with the VIPs. I think this was in a live stream. I think one of the viewers that was on there asked me to take a look at it, and we ended up coming up with this really nice support resistance, these support resistance zones, and they were incredibly well respected, right? So like you could like taken phenomenal trades off of them. But anyway, let's kind of dive into a little bit. So again, here's Matic USDT. This is kind of the price action that we're going to focus on because this is literally the the support resistance boxes that I drew in the slides. And it really starts with this. Like this is where I started in that analysis, because you have a really important daily level right here. Like you have a really important support level here, and it was obviously broken to the downside, right? So this is where things kind of get really interesting. So the thing about this daily support level that you're looking at, it doesn't look like very much at all. But if you take your measurement from the low to your swing high here, right? Let me get this precise. Let me redraw this with the magnet tool there, which I really like, by the way. 47.4% move to the upside. So again, it doesn't look like much, but from your low to your high, 47.4%. That's insane, right? In 4 days, like crazy. And again, it doesn't look like much in comparison because you look at this insane price action that was happening before. Again, like just from this low to this high, you have a 227% move within the span of 1, 2, 3, 4 days, right? So here's day one, which is your low. And then, so again, 1, 2, 3, 4 days, 227% in 4 days trading Matic. Absolute insanity. Anyway, so get back to this. So again, we've identified this is a very important daily support level here that was violated, right? So on this candle here, just right through your daily support level, which I will just draw it here for you that we have an idea. So again, broke this level, and obviously you can tell incredibly well respected, but we'll get to this in a second. So now, like, you can obviously see that it was back tested, resistance. It couldn't get price could not get back above this important support level, so naturally moved to the downside. But we're gonna get into the support resistance zones now, because I think these are actually like, I like, again, there's a time and a place to trade these. Obviously, I use a ton of horizontal levels with my technical analysis. But there's some instances like Matic where I really like the support resistance zones as opposed to like one precise horizontal level. Sometimes it's easier to identify zones or regions within price action where you're likely to, see a reaction. So it's not always a precise level. Like it gives you a better idea of, again, like if instead of maybe entering your full position, right at one particular level, it gives you a little bit of a region where if you want, you could even ladder bids to further like mitigate your risk, right? Which we can talk about, like that's going to be talked about in future videos. But essentially this is, I'm gonna turn this off now. So this is the area of focus, right? So what I want to do is go back to replay, and I kind of want to just replay it from here, just so we can kind of like walk through price action as it's happening. So we know, again, this is a very important level. Like this is your important support level. And I'm going to press play here. So basically right here, okay, so now you're getting your retests. So here's your level. We broke through what you were looking to possibly be as like a local support level, right? And now you're back testing that as resistance. So this is validating the fact that this is an important level, right? Because now price is rejecting from it, so it can't reclaim it. You lost the level, now you're back testing it as resistance now. So this former support now is resistance. So this looking right here at this level, is a massively important level, right? So let's go forward a little bit. Again, another wick there. So here, multiple wicks, right? This is where I draw my box. You have a new daily resistance level now, right? Because you have a level, essentially you have a closure here, an open here, and then price closes down here. So you have this nice kind of flat level here that you're looking at, right? So for me, this, because I just kind of pull this out. Now you have a nice area, and you can delete this line. But now you have a really nice resistance zone, right? Where you look at it, anytime that prices come into this zone, and basically I'm taking it from this candle closure here, right? This candle closure and this candle open, and obviously you like this, the big rejection from this level. And all of these wicks that you see here. So it's encompassing all of these wicks, which again, anytime, like what these wicks are telling you is when it comes into the zone, there's a lot of sellers here that are overwhelming buyers. So like buyers don't have enough firepower essentially to break up and through this level to push price back above, right? There's the sellers are too strong here. And anytime that it comes into the zone, rejection, 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 like big rejection. And then now, you know, again, like this, like until this level, just like we learned in video 1, until it's, you know, essentially like reclaimed, then this is your resistance zone to pay attention to. And it's the same, but it's also the same thing that we learned in video 1. The more times that this level is tested, the likely the weaker that it gets, right? So the more times that buyers come up and test inside of these levels, in theory, the weaker that this level should become. So I'm gonna take a sip of water. All right. So let's see what happens. And also, you're gonna notice that there's going to be a green support box here as well. That's gonna form. So I'm gonna let price develop again, and then we'll walk through that as well, because that's also in the chart that I shared. Okay. So right here again, what happened, right? So now you have this level form that you know is a really important level, which I could have honestly drawn this right here on this candle. So you have this local support, daily support level, very important. And what happens on the candle following, right? So let me draw this out for you again. Essentially, you have this important daily support level. You have a closure open here, closes above. So you know that this is a really important level. And guess what? On this candle, what happens? Well, you get your open, a perfect back test of this support level, and then price pushes higher. Where does it push to? Right back into your resistance zone, right? So again, like incredibly technical, like very technically traded. But this, like, these are why knowing your levels and knowing and like how to use these levels are really, really important, which for VIPs or anybody interested in the Patreon tier to become part of the VIPs, like we go over this extensively in there and like really dive into like how you look to trade these levels. But again, this is a really nice example of that. And then you get your push right back up into resistance, right? So I'm going to label this because I'm about to change a few things here. That way I don't confuse anybody. So this is your resistance zone. Just going to put that right here. Just so we're clear on that, right? So I'm going to delete this. We don't need this anymore. And now what I'm going to do is draw another zone, because I already know that this is a really important daily support. This candle here back tested this daily support level, and it gave me a flawless back test, push up, and like price moved higher, right? You know that this is a really important level. So what I would do, which I don't want to forget, this is another reason that this is really important. So I'm going to start here. I'm just going to pull this out as well. Same thing. So essentially, I'm using your candle closure and open as my base, right? You have a nice base here. And then the wick, right? Because you don't really want to see the wick loss. Obviously, it can happen. Stops can get run. You can get things like swing failure patterns on that we'll talk about in future future modules. But for now, again, like this is the support zone. So I need to change this color. So this is that beautiful green that we all like. And this is your support zone. Very important. Put this here. So now you have your resistance zone. You have your support zone. And not to get too far out of like the context of this video, but now you're developing this beautiful range that you can also trade this range. So that's a different module. But this is forming a really nice range at the moment. Very, very tradable, right? So essentially, when you're able to identify this support zone, you're able to identify this resistance zone, guess what? Now you have again, this really adds to this being a beautiful range to trade, right? There's different analysis that we can do within here to find other key levels, but I'm not going to get into that. Different module, but just identifying where your resistance zone is and your support zone is, now you can look for potentially like really good trades, right? Again, kind of come up into the resistance zone. This is like your sell zone, short zone. And then you come into your support zone. Like this is where you buy, or this is where you go long, right? Same thing. So let's see what happens. Test. So like again, I mean, you didn't come like it like perfectly right down to this, but like this is a test of the support zone. So this is definitely considered a test of it. Again, nice sideways consolidation. Look at this. So test into your support zone, test into your support zone. So also something that you need to be thinking about, right? So you've had your level form here. You technically had this long wick, like this was like a big, you know, liquidation slash stop run, you know, whatever you want to call it. Like there was a lot of, and I'll kind of like talk you through why that this likely happened. Look at the price. This is a big, you know, psychological level. So $1. So Matic, $1 even, price came all the way back down to $1. And, you know, it's a really critical psychological level for a lot of traders. Like people don't want to see it go below $1. So like anybody who's like taking positions around here, right? You know, I'm not saying everybody's doing this, but there's probably a decent amount of people that put their stop losses below $1, right? Because if you think that you lose that dollar psychological support level, again, when price is above here, then you're thinking, you know, it's probably going to go significantly lower. So didn't surprise me that you get this kind of a run. But again, looking at this perfect, beautiful range, you have your resistance zone, your support zone. Your support zone, the very bottom of it, look where it lines up, $1, right? So you have like that, you know, I don't often talk about like price levels being important support or resistance levels, but it does happen, right? So like you think about Matic, $1 psychological level, you think about Bitcoin, you know, 10,000 at one point was a really important psychological level, right? Like anytime that price would come up you know, close to $10,000, like you'd have a lot of resistance there. Like that's a very important psychological level. $100,000 on Bitcoin is going to be an incredibly important psychological level when Bitcoin gets there, you know, stuff like that. So like there are some, you know, like some obvious whole numbers that are big deals, like that's stuff that you should pay attention to. So anyway, the dollar psychological level here gave really nice confluence to this support zone, like being like you want to see this respected, right? So again, let's see what happens. But so far, really nice respect to the resistance zone. You had a beautiful, so again, even if you didn't get this, this was like a beautiful trade, right? And again, the candles don't look pretty. The candles don't look like this is some big move because I'm also zoomed in. But just from your high down to this low is 16.5%. And let me tell you, if you're trading that, that is way, like that is a significant amount. Like that's a big enough move to make a very, you know, decent amount of money. Take another sip. All right. So let's see what happens. Right here. So this right away, one test, and you already like kind of ran the stops, like, right? So like you already kind of did this. But here's like one test of this area. Price moves up. There's another test, you know. So again, you already had kind of your initial level here where you drew your zone. Here's a test. Here's a test. And like as this support zone gets tested multiple times, like almost every single day, right? you see like the reaction's weaker, right? And then it really sideways before you lose this level. So once you lose this support zone, so this is confirmed that this support zone is now no longer support. You lost that level. Watch what happens. So several red candles, like you see how big of a move down this was, right? So now support, this flips to resistance. Because you would expect it to be resistance now because price is below it, right? So we're going to see what happens, like, because we're actually going to kind of trade this out for a bit. But this is literally what I had talked about in that live stream, which I think it's on YouTube somewhere. But I was literally saying, if you lose this, now there was actually a range, a former old range, and it traded in beautifully. I don't want to do it for this video because it's again, it's outside of the context of the video, but it fell right into a former range and it like hit those levels perfectly, really well respected. It was pretty awesome. But anyway, broke down here. Like, so if you lose this former support zone, now it's flipped into resistance. Like, this is a good entry sometimes. Again, you kind of want to, like, you know, have other reasons to be able to take this trade, but you're losing a very critical support zone. You're losing the psychological dollar area. You know that, you know, again, well, you might not know, but like I knew that there was a former range down here that looked really like a decent target. But again, you lost this support zone and price it was literally just collapsed, right? So let's see what happens. Big moves. So let me fix it there. All right, so big move to the downside. Even just so we'll just take it from the closure of this candle, right? So again, on July 12th, candle closed, you lost your support zone just from your closure down to your low. 37.5% move to the downside within the span of 8 days. Like, that is a significant move, right? So even just understanding that this support zone being lost is a huge deal, and you can get into an entry, because again, if price flips back up into this range that you see here, reclaims this form, you know, again, reclaims this, and this becomes kind of a support zone again, right? Then you're out of your trade with probably minimal loss, right? Like that's how you would do that. Like that's how you would take that trade essentially. Again, like it's pretty cut and dry. But you have your entry, your invalidation's pretty close in my opinion. Like you would know pretty quickly if you're wrong on this idea or not. Big move down. Like this is an incredible trade, which just came right back into the former range that I was talking about. So what I'm going to do now is drag these out just so that, because again, this was a former support zone. Now it's probably now it should be flipped into resistance, right? So let's see what happens. And I'll drag this one out too. Might have to drag it out more. I'm not sure. Actually, no, we're good. Well, maybe. We'll see. All right, so here we go. Well, I'll play out a couple more candles. We'll see what happens. So basically, we came up into like our old zone, right? And it just, again, maybe on low time frames, it had a bit more respect, but this just blew right through it. So that you know that this level now isn't as important, right? So you kind of, you had a big run here. Maybe there was a lot of stops above here. Again, psychologically, get close to the psychological dollar level, big wick to the upside. Closure, your candle closed. Let's see here, $1.01. So like you close back above your psychological level. And then if you look here, what do you have here? Another really important support on a daily time frame. So this is another really important daily support. What happened on this candle? Well, it opened flawless back test of this daily support level and nice closure, right? So like you get that kind of reaction, you know that typically when you see that, I'm favoring more upside, right? Like that's kind of like what that tells me. Let's see what happens. So again, this resistance zone is done, which I should delete it. Nice kind of back test of this bottom area though, right? So this is kind of where, so now we have a bit more to look at. So I guess it's technically not done, right? You can, actually this did a really, like a pretty nice job. Obviously like the wicks are a little bit lower, but again, kind of came back into the zone and it did flip it back into support. Like you could say, again, it's not perfect because some of the wicks are lower than the zone, but it did essentially flip this back into support. Big move to the upside. And this again is another test of this resistance zone, right? So what I'm going to do is flip this back into support. Price is above it. It's actually holding pretty nicely. I guess I should do this just to not confuse people. But this is essentially, again, like I would probably draw this a little bit differently if it were me. I would actually redraw it and I'll show you. And I think if I should do this, I don't want to confuse people. But if I was being really picky, I'd probably draw something like this. I mean, this is kind of a big, I don't think you really need to do that. You can actually take it from this level here. Like that. Because that's really what you want to see held, right? You don't really want to see this, like you really wouldn't want to see price come below here, because then you're kind of in danger of retesting, you know, this daily support level that's already been tested, right? So you really wouldn't want to see price break below this zone. And then you could put this here. So you're getting another example, like again, support zone. This is, and to be very clear, this is almost identical to this other support zone. It's almost identical. The levels are just changed by like a cent or two, right? So like it's not that much different than here. I'm just kind of dragging it over towards price action that's over here, make it a little bit easier to see and like to make it like as relevant as it can be, right? So again, same resistance zone that your last test was June 29th. You still know that this is resistance, and look at this massive move to the downside. Do you get your reversal? And what happens on August 8th? How many days is this? Date range. So from your last test to your test here, 39 days. So price rejection, big move away. 39 days later, it comes up to the exact same resistance zone. And there's your resistance. Again, comes right up. Again, it doesn't get like a perfect touch, but this is a test. You're talking about literally like a fraction of a penny difference, right? Like this is a test. And what do we know happens the more times price comes up to test a certain zone? Usually weakens it, right? So let's see what happens. And there you go. Wow. Okay, so big things to talk about right here. Again, we just said it. The more times a zone is tested, the weaker it becomes. Look what happened on this day. So you got your rejection. You can't really see it. 13.25% rejection. That's a big rejection. Like that's like really tradable. Okay. Like 13.25% rejection. Price comes up to approach this yet again. And finally, buyers overwhelm sellers. Sellers can't hang anymore. They're done. They're exhausted, right? They can't defend this zone anymore. Buyers step in and absolutely just rip right through this level. And what is incredible here, which again is a really, really nice trade opportunity. Massive candle. This is very bullish, right? You know this level is busted now. Like this is it. The confirmation that this level is busted and now it's turned into a support zone is on this candle. Because what happened? On the next day, your candle opened. Absolute flawless back test of your former resistance zone. Big reaction. Forms a nice daily support level here. Price moves to the upside. So you know now we can change this. Excuse me here. You can change this to support. So this becomes a very important support zone. So hopefully you see how that works. drag this over, make it a little easier, right? And then we'll see what happens. That's basically it for now. And price basically is moving higher, right? So like it's kind of, you know, like as far as this example goes, I just gave you a walkthrough of support and resistance zones and being able to identify how they form, why they're important, kind of what they define, like what do these support and resistance zones mean, and kind of giving you like some trade ideas, essentially like how you could look to trade either breakouts or breakdowns of these levels, right? And like what's even better, okay? So like I'll pull this back again. You can see it's basically the same zone that we drew from over here. This is one of those instances where, like, if you're able to get into a trade here, so again, remember when this was resistance, right? If you're able to, like, let's say you got into a nice short position somewhere around here and price gave you this move to the downside, right? Like getting into this short position, obviously, like you're probably looking to take some profit here at the support zone. It would make sense because that's where you would expect price to kind of reverse, right? So let's say hypothetically you got into a short, you took some profit off here, and then you get this movement happen. Like you just entered, like you just got a killer position, right? Absolutely killer position. And then vice versa. You reclaim this former resistance into support. You know, you're definitely reclaiming this as support. If you wanted to enter a position, and if you go down on lower time frames, whatever, find a nice position. Price moves up into your former resistance zone. You'd probably take some profit there, probably be a smart move because like this could continue in this range, you know, for quite a while. And then you get this breakout move. So like you're already in a position here, right? So like these are like good places to potentially look. You don't always have to buy like a retest of the breakout. Although like, you know, typically like when you get these setups, when you get a super clean back test and a big reaction like that, that's pretty nice entry. You know, it ends up being a really nice entry as well. But that's also like kind of how you can look to trade that. But hopefully you kind of like took something away from this chart. Again, like how they're formed, why they're important, kind of like what psychological things are happening within these zones, and when the support or resistance zones are broken, kind of like what that signifies, right? Now, like what you're looking for. So I am going to go over one more example, which is a chart that I did this for the VIPs yesterday. We actually did a live stream and went over this live, and we were looking for trade entries for BNB. So this actually is a pretty good one. Just another example of a support zone and resistance zone that you could look for. So let's go check that out. Here is BNB USDT. This is a 4-hour time frame, a little bit smaller time frame because this is very like localized price action. And again, we were talking about this. I think we literally spent an hour and 15 minutes talking about BNB USD in the VIP live stream. We like really broke the chart down. It was actually a lot of fun. But like really digging into all the levels, using the different tools in our tool belts that I'm teaching them, and identifying, you know, really nice trade potentials, like essentially looking for trade zones, right? Like where are really good entries or what to look for. So that's kind of what we were going over. And this is kind of one of those things that I did go over in the video, and this which very much relates to this specific support resistance video. So I'm going to cover it again. But basically, so again, this is BNB USD 4-hour chart, right? So like you had this impulsive move up. Again, I'm really just going to focus on this because this is what the analysis was about. So you had a really nice move to the upside. You know, basically like a bit of a, you know, you had a tiny bit of consolidation, another move up, really nice sideways consolidation before a very impulsive move up to form this upper range here, right? But again, very nice consolidation here. I like the flat levels that you're kind of seeing, right? Like this could be a nice area for a potential retest, which you actually got. And so this becomes a zone of interest for me. So really kind of use these, you know, you can essentially use about these candle closures here, but it's really going to come back down to your former, essentially your former range where you broke out from, right? And really like it's here that you're identifying this, by the way. Like I'm not, you know, trying to say that, like, I mean, again, like, this is always when you have a very clear, you know, again, you have a nice range here, impulsive move, price kind of chops around, you have a bit of a retrace, you're always looking for a potential retest of a zone like this. Or I shouldn't say zone, but you're looking for a retest of this level, essentially. Here. And again, this is a really nice 4-hour resistance level, essentially, that's formed here. So you have a really nice 4-hour resistance level that's formed. And, you know, it's formed here. Even on this candle, you had a back test, level is resistance, and then, you know, like price pushes off a bit. Another kind of resistance test here, move to the downside before it's broken, right? So like this, even on lower time frames, just this green line that you see here is a really important support resistance level, which in this case is resistance. And then now price obviously reclaims this level, breaks up through it, and you get a really impulsive move after you break this, what was resistance. And here you get a pretty, I mean, like, you don't get an exact test, like a flawless test, but this is this is really nice test. And look what happens. It's defended very well, so you know that this level is support. Big move to the upside, right? But here's kind of where I draw my zone and where I would get interested. And I'll tell you why this is kind of interest. So it's really, you know, you could start it here, which I'm eyeing here, by the way. But it's really like any of these. You know, it's probably better going a day. I think we were looking at this on a daily time frame, but I'm going to make a little bit of an adjustment here. So I would just pull this all the way across. This level's not needed anymore. So you could draw it one of two ways. I mean, like, I like to use basically literally the, you know, again, this was your consolidation before your new high, right? You got your retest, so you know, and like really strong reaction, so you know that basically, like, you really don't want to start losing this wick, right? So I mean, you could draw it like this and be really specific with your wick. For me, I'd probably give this one a little bit of leeway. It's like, again, you see where this wick. So like, you know that like this level is important to previous price action. Then you get your breakout, and you know, again, it's you're talking maybe $1 difference, not a big deal, but like this is kind of why I would draw it this way. And this should be, yeah, it should be green because it's support now. To the upside, right? So I guess I should finish this out. This is support zone. And I'm not, you know, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through the replay and like watch every single retest. Like, you can see how well this did, and we're literally sitting on the support zone again, right? So like, you know, like this, where we're sitting right now, and even the reaction that you're seeing, like, we haven't busted through this or anything, like, you know, like, we're still respecting this level. So you had this candle come down, right? Wick into it, close above this candle, wick into it. You're above price action right now. Again, like, this is still really respecting the support zone. Now, again, once this level, like, once you've kind of decided that this like support zone should be on your chart, it's pretty important. It would at least be like, the latest is going to be right here, right? Look how many opportunities you had to trade this. Like, look at this, right? So like 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, now again, right, you had 4 very like clear opportunities to look for a trade. And how did they play out for you? So again, you have this one, big move to the upside, right? And you could have even, again, support zone test in here, which basically tested this 4-hour level here, but back test of it, huge move. That's a big move. Price comes back down into your support zone again. Another nice long opportunity. You do get a move to the upside. Now you're getting another opportunity, but like, again, as the more times that it's tested, and this is the current candle, right? This is literally right now, this second. So like, but the more times that you kind of get tested into the zone, gotta start to be a little bit careful, right? This is a bigger zone, so to be fair. Like, this is, you know, this is a pretty decent size zone. So you also have one very clear one to the upside, right? So this is like where you're looking for longs. You don't want to see the support zone loss, because if you do, you might be seeing much lower prices, right? I'm like much lower price, but like, you're probably going to see lower prices. Then you have a really important zone to the upside. that in a minute I'm going to draw out as your resistance zone. And for those, like, some of you can probably see it right away. Again, this is, I don't want to deviate too far from what this video is supposed to be about, but there's a very specific reason why this level is incredibly important. So I'm going to show that to you. Again, this doesn't have to do, I mean, to be fair, it is a very important resistance level. So I guess it is very applicable to the theory of this video, right? But it's using essentially, like, it's using a different type of technical analysis that I haven't gone over yet. So you're gonna get a very, very quick look. I'm taking a Fibonacci retracement from your all-time high to your all-time, I'm sorry, it's not your all-time low, but it's your swing low, right? Fibonacci retracement, all-time high down to your May 23rd, $211 low. Like, this is the entire low of this range, right? And it's like very important Fibonacci pull to take. And here's what I'm going to draw out for you. This is your golden pocket. Immensely important. I'm going to be covering this in different modules. And this is something that's been on my chart well before price ever came back here, because I do this on every single chart that I have, because this is such an important Fibonacci pull. I'm going to delete this here in a second, but I just want you to see. This is your golden pocket. This GP, that's what that means, golden pocket. So whenever you see my charts and you see a yellow box on there, I don't ever really type golden pocket in there because I know exactly what it is. But if you're looking at any of my other charts and you see a golden, like a yellow box like this, that's a golden pocket of some sort. So like it's a golden pocket of some Fibonacci pull, like some fib pull that I did, right? But anyway, your all-time high, so you know that's an immensely important level. Huge swing low down here. Price doesn't come really close. Like, I mean, it does kind of come close here, but again, like, this is this is clearly your low. And look where we're finding resistance right now. Your golden pocket. So what I will tell you, you can zoom in on the same 4-hour chart that we used to draw this and look at, this is absolute perfection. Resistance, this level is on my chart way before price ever got here. Like, you can, as soon as that low is made and you start seeing price push up, start to form that range, that like this fib pulls on your chart, and you're looking at this as a potential level. Obviously, like when it was at $211, $250 around there, like, you're not like, oh, this is going to $500, but you're well aware of this level, and like you're prepared to trade it if and when price does indeed come back up to it, which it did. But look how flawless this becomes. Like, this is your resistance level. Again, in like very technically traded. So here's technical analysis. It's amazing how it works sometimes, right? Your 618, your golden pocket, perfect resistance. You get a push down to your support zone. We identify this as a support zone or a buy zone. Price right back up in your golden pocket. You actually swing failure these highs, which is, again, like, you have a swing failure pattern here, really powerful, big move to the downside into your support zone, which gave you another buy opportunity, right? So like, you see how you can trade in between your support zone and your resistance zone. So now what I'm going to do to avoid confusing people, because I'm using, again, this is not really what this video is about, but to be very clear, your golden pocket is absolutely, like, when you have this, again, this is a bearish Fibonacci retracement. So like, you're looking for this to be resistance, right? This absolutely is. It's part of support resistance. Like, you expect this to be resistance. But so remember that yellow box. All right. Remember that yellow box. So here, all these wicks, right? This wick here. So how would I draw my resistance zone now? Well, I'll tell you, it would be this wick high, because that's still, like, that's an important wick high. And again, the golden pocket, absolutely, like, this falls within it, right? So we already know it's important. So mine would look something like this now. And this is your resistance, okay? Here's your resistance zone. So you have a very clear range here, first of all. So when I get into range trading, for those of you who are in VIP, we've been talking about range trading quite a bit. I think you're starting to get a really nice grasp on how, like we're working towards being really good range traders, right? Because like we like to make money in ranges as well. Most people get absolutely wrecked in ranges. I actually really prefer range trading. I think it's much, I really prefer range trading. Obviously if something's trending either direction, you trade with the trend until it's not, it's not the correct trend anymore, until you get a trend reversal. But for ranges, I really enjoy them. But anyway, you have a very clear range here. Nice sideways price action. You have multiple opportunities into your resistance zone, right? Which has massive confluence because this is also part of your golden pocket. So this resistance zone is absolutely legit, right? Like it is an important zone to be aware of. And your support zone down here, which basically the bottom of your support zone is your former range. That is, this was your former resistance. Impulsive, like big, nice impulsive move up. Back test showing you that this is now support, right? So the bottom of this support, very important level. So like you have a lot of reasons telling you like that these two zones are very, very valid, right? Now, again, I said this before already, but to keep in mind, you're getting a lot of tests into your support zone. And like this is okay as it sits. There's nothing wrong with it, right? There's nothing that's saying we're going to like drop here and there, or like here right now. But again, test into your support zone, big move. Test into your support zone, not as big of a move, but still a nice move. Test into your support zone, question mark. Like what are we going to get out of this? Because so far it's been less, like you get less of a response. The more time something gets tested, weaker it gets. So that's something to keep in mind. You're not getting as like good of a, it's still early. You don't need to see like some crazy response here, but like that's something to keep in mind though. Like we've tested this kind of zone quite a few times already. But again, these two levels very, very important, especially the resistance zone, absolutely massive. So like if price did come back up into this resistance zone, like again, you could look for a counter trade, to the downside. Just be careful. I mean, again, you got a lot of wicks up into this resistance zone as well. And the last wick that you actually had up into this resistance zone, you took, like you ran these highs all the way up to the top, which again is the reason for like the zone being up at the top. But that was a pretty big move. So if you start pushing up into this resistance zone, especially if you start to get some candle closures inside of it, I'd be really careful fading that, right? So how would you look to trade this outside of what I've told you? Support zone, buy zone, resistance zone, take profit zone, potential short zone, depending on your flavor. What do you like to do, right? Like what's your risk tolerance? But also keep in mind, here's your trend. There's your trend. So shorting here from a technical standpoint, it makes sense. Like you have reasons to do it, but keep in mind, this is a very, very impressively strong trend. To be fair, this is one of the first times that we're actually, like, this is actually a longer consolidation. Also something to think about, like, right? So like that is something to think about. Like your trend is slowing here, definitely. Like the bullish momentum is slowing to a degree. There's nothing wrong with it consolidating here at all, but it is like you're definitely spending a bit more time around here. You ran into a massive, major, critical resistance level, so it's not surprising, but it's just something to keep in mind. So I already talked to you about buying, selling, shorting, long, these two levels. Now, same thing with the Matic chart. You have opportunities here potentially if you lose these levels, right? So if you lose this support zone, maybe a retest here could be a nice short opportunity. Depends on your risk tolerance. Again, if we were to lose this, it would start to look kind of bad because you come back into this former, again, this is like a small range. But if you come back into and you're like trading within this old range here, it wouldn't be very good to lose this support zone. So maybe you have a nice trade to the downside if you do indeed lose this. And maybe, again, you get like you had that very clean back test on Matic. The price moved 37.5% to the downside. I'm not saying that's going to happen with BNB, but I'm just telling you like that's what happened. you had a technical reason to enter a short position here and you got a really nice trade out of it. Could happen here. Vice versa, if you're not a range trader and you don't really want to trade this sideways chop, which again, like, know your strengths when you're trading, right? If you're not comfortable with it, don't do it. But you could wait for price to reclaim this resistance zone and flip this into support, right? So essentially, if, and there, like you would, you know, there's other technical analysis that you can do to tell you if that's a good trade, because you want to see like all their other horizontal support resistance levels that are anywhere near close, that type of stuff to kind of give you an idea. But what would be happening as well, and not to stray too far from, you know, the reasons for this video, but if you flip this resistance zone into support, right? So if price came through it, maybe even gave you a nice back test, that could be a really nice entry, but you'd also be breaking through your golden pocket. That's a big deal, right? So if that happens, I would probably be a lot more bullish on this move, and you're probably looking for like a pretty decent move to the upside. So those are, you know, I just gave you literally like the multitude of ways that you could look to trade this. So like, I hope that this was helpful. You know, I hope that the support and resistance zones were, again, I hope that they were helpful, and I hope that you understand kind of like how I drew them, where I got them from, why they're important, who's playing in these zones, right? Like who's winning support zones. And like, this is an area that's defended by buyers essentially, right? Like sellers try to break through it, buyers defend this area, push price up. So like, this is a really strong area. There's a lot of, you know, buyers that are willing to defend this level at this point. Your resistance zone is the opposite. A lot of wicks into it. There's a lot of sellers that are defending this area. And but I will say, this wick, again, that's a huge wick. So if price does come back up into this resistance zone, I would be a little less light, you know, I would feel a little bit less confident that like you're going to get a rejection off of this. So that is something like, this is a really big wick. So we'll say that. But again, basically talked you through the theory, how it works, how you find the levels. This is definitely something that you're going to want to practice. You know, like you gotta, it's like anything else in technical analysis. You really want to spend a lot of time practicing and spend a lot of time going through, like, again, you can do the replay just like I did, you know, go through some charts, look at some historical price action, try to find some zones, and like, you know, again, use the replay and like drag yourself way before that and try to identify these support resistance zones as they're happening, and then see if you're getting the right idea, see if you're getting the reaction that you're looking for, how did price action do for your support resistance zones that you found, and see if you're successful doing it, right? But this is definitely something that it might take a couple times watching the video. Totally cool, totally fine, it's expected. But this is a really helpful tool. It's definitely something that I use in my technical analysis. It just makes things nice and visual, especially when I'm sharing charts in Discord, or I'm talking about it to the VIPs, or I'm talking about to you know, Discord members. It just makes it a little, it's visually appealing, right? It's easier for you to understand where like the critical levels are. Essentially, not everything is always a perfect horizontal level like we looked at in video 1. Not everything is always like, you know, like you're gonna find these zones essentially where like price will come into but not be able to push out of. So like, it's not just, you know, one flat level that you're looking at. And sometimes it's a little easier to visualize and be able to, you know, be able to trade if you know that these zones exist and kind of like how you look to trade them. But anyway, I feel like I walked through everything. Hopefully, again, you got some value out of this video, and we will see you on the next support resistance video. With that being said, have a nice day. Trade safe out there.